The prison ship drifted in silence across the endless dark of space. It was a massive vessel, built from black iron and alien alloys shaped like a floating fortress. No windows, no stars, only the faint glow of red lights crawling along its hull. Inside, corridors stretched like a maze, filled with the sounds of metal doors, humming generators, and the soft footsteps of guards who rarely spoke. Deep in the lowest chamber, inside a cell colder than ice, sat a single human. His body was thin, his skin marked with bruises and scars, but his eyes still carried fire. His name was Elias Ward, though the guards never cared to ask. To them he was just the human, the last one, the one they had not killed. Chains held him against the wall, thick, black, and humming with energy. His breathing was slow, controlled, almost unnatural for someone so broken in body. He had been here for years, maybe longer. Time in the prison ship was not measured by days or nights. It was measured by the sound of the cell door opening, by the footsteps of alien guards, and by the whispers they thought he could not hear. They whispered often. "Why do we still keep it alive?" One guard hissed, its voice slithering through sharp teeth. "Orders," another replied. "The High Command says to study it. Humans are too dangerous to leave unchecked." Dangerous? Look at it, weak, starving. Do not be fooled. Even one human is a threat. The words always reached Ward's ears. He never answered. He only stared into the darkness of his cell, his mind turning, his heart refusing to surrender. Far away in the stars, humanity was a ghost story. Most believed humans were extinct, wiped out in the Great Purge long ago. Children in alien schools were told tales of the savage race that would not bow. Some laughed at the stories, others trembled. But all believed one thing: humans were gone, except one sat chained in silence. Then it happened. The ship trembled. At first it was faint, a soft vibration under the floor. Then alarms screamed, echoing down the corridors. The red lights began to flash faster, bathing the halls in warning. Guards shouted in confusion, rushing toward their stations. Another tremor shook the ship. This time louder. Metal groaned, bulkheads snapped, sparks rained down from the ceiling. Something outside was firing, something powerful. Ward opened his eyes fully for the first time in days. He knew the sound of battle. Even in chains, even half-starved, his instincts sharpened. Boom! The entire vessel rocked, throwing guards against walls. The distant sound of metal tearing filled the air. Explosions followed, one after another. The attackers were not trying to disable. They were trying to break the ship open. Enemy fire. Unknown origin. A voice screamed over the loudspeakers. Alien prisoners from other cells began to cry out. Some shouted in fear, others in hope. The prison ship was falling apart. Then the walls cracked open. A blast tore through the far corridor. Smoke and flames swallowed the hallway. Figures poured in through the breach, armored, masked, carrying weapons that hissed with blue light. They were not human. Their armor was sleek, scaled, almost insect-like. The invaders moved fast, precise. They shot down guards, unlocked cells, and pulled prisoners free. The screams of aliens filled the air as chains broke and captives stumbled into freedom. But when they reached Ward's cell, they froze. The human sat chained in silence, his face hidden in shadow. One of the rescuers raised a weapon, unsure. "Is that—" "Yes," another whispered. "It's one of them. A human." They stared as if looking at a ghost. Ward lifted his head slowly. His eyes burned with a quiet strength that unsettled even his rescuers. The leader stepped forward, tapping the console to unlock the cell. The chains dropped with a heavy clang. Ward did not fall. He stood, weak but unbroken. The rescuers exchanged uneasy looks. They had freed dozens of alien prisoners already, but none had filled them with this strange mix of fear and respect. "Take him," the leader ordered. The escape was chaos. The rescuers guided prisoners through broken corridors, past fires and fallen guards. Explosions still rocked the ship as the attackers fought their way back. Ward said nothing, only followed, his bare feet echoing on the cold metal floor. At last they reached the hangar. A sleek black ship waited, its engines glowing like molten stars. One by one, the prisoners rushed inside. Ward was the last to board. As he stepped onto the ship, whispers followed him. "Impossible. I thought humans were gone. How did he survive? Why keep one alive?" The rescuers did not answer. Their eyes stayed on Ward, watching his every move. Inside, the ship's lights flickered on. The door sealed shut. Engines roared, and the vessel shot into the void just as the prison ship collapsed behind them in fire and wreckage. The prisoners sat in silence, breathing hard, trying to understand their sudden freedom. But their eyes kept drifting back to the human, to Elias Ward. He sat apart, silent, his hands resting on his knees. He did not smile. He did not thank them. He only stared at the floor, lost in thought. Finally, one of the rescuers whispered words that chilled everyone in the room. "We thought humans were gone." Ward slowly lifted his head. His gaze met theirs, sharp and unyielding. The room went still. If one human had survived, then where were the rest? And why had the galaxy been told they were extinct? The ship raced away into the stars, but inside silence hung heavier than chains. The question burned in every mind. Why was one human left alive? And if he was only one, where was the rest of humanity? The ship carrying the rescued prisoners sped through the void, engines humming like a heartbeat. Behind them, the prison vessel burned, its black frame breaking apart, swallowed by the silence of space. No one spoke at first. Freedom felt strange, almost unreal. In the middle of the small craft, aliens of many kinds huddled together, scaled, feathered and furred beings who had once been enemies, now bound by the same chains of captivity. They whispered among themselves, but their voices always circled back to one figure. The human Elias Ward sat apart, his back straight even in exhaustion. His clothes were torn, his skin pale, but his presence carried weight. He said nothing. He did not need to. Every eye in the room found him sooner or later, and every whisper carried the same unease. I thought they were all destroyed. Impossible. I was told humans were extinct. Why did the Empire keep one alive? The rescuers themselves, the insect-like warriors in black armor, were no less shaken. They had fought through fire and chaos to free prisoners, but when they found him, something in their movements had changed. They had grown quieter, careful, even afraid. Now, as the ship cut across the stars, the leader of the rescuers finally stepped forward. She removed her helmet, revealing a face sharp and angular, with eyes like molten silver. Her voice was steady, but her tone carried respect. "You are human." Ward raised his gaze slowly. His eyes were tired, but not broken. "Yes." The single word dropped into the room like a stone in water. The whispers grew louder, until the leader raised her hand for silence. "My name is Commander Serik," she said. "We are the Kareth. We fight against the Empire." "But you—" She hesitated, studying him as though he were a weapon half awake. "We thought your kind was gone." Ward's lips tightened, but he said nothing more. Hours passed. The ship drifted into a hidden sector, cloaked among the shadows of a dying star. Here, carved into the rock of a hollowed asteroid, lay the Kareth base, a secret place where rebels and fugitives gathered. Always hunted, never safe, the ship docked. One by one, the freed prisoners were guided out, their chains removed, their names recorded. Food and water were handed out. The base smelled of metal, smoke, and survival. Ward stepped out last. The Kareth watched him carefully, their hands never far from their weapons. Some of the freed aliens backed away, muttering in fear. Others stared at him with a strange mix of awe and pity. Commander Serik walked at his side. "You will be safe here," she said. "But understand this, your presence changes everything." "The galaxy believes humans are a myth." Ward finally broke his silence. His voice was low, rough from years of disuse, but every word carried weight. "Not a myth. Not gone." The commander's steps faltered. She turned to him. "What do you mean?" Ward's eyes narrowed. He said no more. Later, in the central chamber, the Kareth Council gathered. Their leaders argued in sharp voices, their insect-like wings twitching with unease. "Why bring him here?" one demanded. "A human is dangerous, even one." "He was a prisoner of the Empire," Serik answered firmly. "He deserves freedom as much as the others." "Freedom? Or is he a weapon left behind?" "The Empire does not make mistakes. If one human lives, it is for a reason." Ward listened from the shadows. He did not defend himself. He had grown used to fear. It followed his kind everywhere, even in stories. At last, Serik spoke again. "Enough, he is under our protection now. If the Empire comes for him, they will have to face us." The council fell silent at her words, but their eyes betrayed doubt. That night, Ward sat alone in the dim quarters given to him. A tray of food lay untouched. His mind wandered back to the whispers of the guards. to the endless chains, to the years of silence in the cold prison cell. But deeper still, he thought of something else. Not all humans were gone. Somewhere beyond these stars, hidden and silent, his people had survived. He knew it. He had seen the signals before his capture, faint but real. Humanity had not been destroyed, only scattered, driven into the dark, forced to wait. And Ward had never given up on that hope. The Kareth base was alive with whispers. The rescued prisoners settled into their new quarters, but their voices carried the same nervous question. What happens now that a human walks among us? Every corridor Ward passed through grew silent. Some stared, others stepped aside, a few refused to meet his eyes at all. The Kareth rebels had fought the Empire for decades, but even they treated him as if he were something more dangerous than their enemy. Commander Serik kept watch. She studied him carefully, always alert, always weighing his every move. But Ward revealed little. He walked quietly, ate little, spoke less. On the surface, he looked like a broken soldier, trying to find his strength again. But inside, he carried a secret no one else knew. That night, in the quiet of his quarters, Ward sat by the small table lit with a faint blue glow. In his hand was the same shard of metal he had hidden from the guards. He turned it over between his fingers, staring at the etchings that only a human could read. It was more than a memory. It was a key. A transmitter. A signal encoded in layers that no alien would understand. He tapped it 3 times. The shard pulsed faintly. Across the cold void of space, a hidden beacon lit for the briefest second. It was not strong enough to be traced, not long enough to be intercepted, but enough for one purpose, to tell his people that he was alive. Humanity would hear him. He was certain. The next day, Serik summoned Ward to the council chamber. "Sit," she said. Though her tone made it sound more like a command, Ward obeyed without a word. The council members stood around the circular table, their wings folded tightly against their backs. Their faces were tense, their voices sharp. "We need answers," one said. "The Empire claimed your kind was destroyed. Yet here you sit. Why?" Ward leaned back in the chair, his face unreadable. "Because they failed." The room grew tense. Another counselor slammed a clawed hand against the table. "Do not play games, human. The Empire does not fail. They wiped out worlds, burned fleets. They do not make mistakes. If you survived, it was because they wanted it so." Ward's jaw tightened. He thought of the guards' whispers, of the endless years in chains. He thought of how carefully the Empire had kept him alive. Yes, it was no accident. But he would not give them the whole truth. "Not yet. They kept me as proof," he said at last. "A warning to others. They wanted me alive so they could remind the galaxy what happens to those who resist." Half the council nodded grimly. The explanation was believable. But Serik watched him closer than the rest. Her silver eyes narrowed. She sensed there was more. Later, in the mess hall, Ward sat with a bowl of thin soup he barely touched. Around him, alien prisoners turned refugees whispered. Their words drifted through. The air like smoke. "I do not trust him. They say one human ship destroyed an entire armada. During the purge, lies. No, single ship could do that. You don't know humans. I heard they fought even when the stars burned." Ward ignored the talk. But one young Kareth soldier sat across from him, watching. After a moment, the soldier leaned closer and spoke softly. "Are the stories true?" Ward raised an eyebrow. "Which ones?" "That humans never stop fighting." Ward's lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile. "You'll see." The soldier shivered, though he wasn't sure why. In the hidden hangar of the base, Ward found himself staring at ships that had seen better days. Patched hulls, stolen engines, weapons barely held together. The Kareth were brave, but they were few, and their war was one of survival, not victory. One mechanic noticed him. A 4-armed being with rust-colored skin stepped forward. "You know ships?" Ward ran a hand along the battered hull of a fighter. "I used to," the mechanic chuckled. "This one barely flies. We keep her together with glue and prayers." Ward inspected the wiring, the cracked armor plates, the improvised fuel lines. His mind worked quickly, as it always had. The Kareth had heart, but they lacked what humans carried in their bones, the drive to take broken things and turn them into weapons of survival. He gave the mechanic a few suggestions, simple changes. The alien frowned, but followed them. Minutes later, the fighter roared to life, smoother than it had in months. The mechanic stared. How did you? Ward only shrugged. Humans build. Humans adapt. Word spread quickly after that. The human wasn't just dangerous. He was useful. But while some looked at him with new respect, others grew more fearful. Whispers turned darker. What if he is calling them? What if humanity rises again? Then the galaxy will drown in fire. That night, as Ward activated his shard again, a faint tremor passed through the stars. The signal had reached further this time. He could feel it. And somewhere, far beyond the reach of the Empire, something stirred. He remembered the last time he had seen his people's fleets, burning, scattering, vanishing into the dark. He had thought them gone forever. But now he knew better. Humanity was not extinct. It was waiting, watching, preparing. And when they returned, they would not come quietly. Commander Sarek entered his quarters without knocking. Ward quickly closed his hand over the shard, hiding the faint blue glow. "You are keeping something from us," she said coldly. Ward met her silver eyes without flinching. "I keep many things." Sarek's wings shifted, a sign of anger in her kind. "If you bring danger to this base, you will answer for it." Ward leaned forward, his voice quiet but sharp as steel. "Danger is already here. The moment you freed me, the Empire marked this place. You should not fear what I might bring. You should fear what's already coming." For a long moment they stared at each other in silence. Then Sarek turned and left, her expression unreadable. When the door shut, Ward opened his hand again. The shard pulsed once more, brighter than before. The message was clear: "I am alive. Come for me." The galaxy was a web of whispers, in shadowed marketplaces, in smoky cantinas, in the crowded halls of starports. The same words passed from mouth to mouth, carried like sparks on the wind. A human lives. At first it was dismissed as nonsense. A rumor, nothing more, but the tale spread too quickly, traveling across trade routes and smuggler channels, slipping into encrypted signals and rebel transmissions. Some laughed at it, others shook their heads in denial. Yet deep down, every alien who heard the words felt the same chill. Humans were supposed to be gone. But what if they were not? On the Kareth base, the tension grew heavier each day. Prisoners who had once looked at Ward with suspicion now watched him with fearful fascination. His silence only made it worse. He never boasted, never explained, never denied the rumors. He let them spread like wildfire, knowing the galaxy itself would fan the flames. One night in the mess hall, a group of aliens argued loudly. "It's impossible," a reptilian miner barked, slamming his fist on the table. "The Empire destroyed them. I saw the purge with my own eyes. Then how do you explain him?" Another countered, pointing across the room at Ward, who sat alone, quietly eating. The reptilian's eyes narrowed. "A trick. A lie." But even as he said it, doubt crept into his voice. Ward did not look up. He didn't need to. He could feel their fear. He could feel their hope, far beyond the base. The rumors reached places where whispers carried great weight. In the halls of the Galactic Trade Union, merchants argued that if humans were alive, war would return, and trade would burn. In the chambers of the Outer Rim alliances, warlords sharpened their blades, remembering ancient battles against human fleets, and in the Empire's capital, the High Command gathered in silence, their faces cold as stone. "Find the source," one of the Empire's generals hissed. "If a human truly lives, we will erase not only him but any who shelter him." Orders spread like poison. Agents were dispatched, fleets were prepared. The Empire could not allow the galaxy to believe in humanity again. Back on the Kareth base, Commander Sarek called Ward into her private chamber. The room was small, its walls covered in star maps and coded transmissions. "You know what's happening," she said. Ward remained still. "The Empire is listening." Sarek's silver eyes burned. "Not just the Empire, everyone. Your presence is a storm. The galaxy trembles because of you." Ward leaned forward. "Good. Let them tremble." Sarek slammed her fist against the table. "Do you want them to come here? Do you want to doom us all?" Ward's voice was calm but sharp. They were always coming. "My being here only forces the truth into the open." Sarek studied him for a long moment, her jaw tight. Then she asked the question that weighed most heavily on her. "Are there more of you?" Ward's eyes flickered just for an instant. Then his silence was answer enough. Elsewhere in the base, some of the freed aliens debated what to do. "We should turn him over to the Empire," one said. "It will save us all. Betray the one who shared our chains." Another snapped. Never. He's not like us, a third hissed. He is more dangerous than all of us. The debate grew heated, but no decision was made. Fear gnawed at them, but so did loyalty. And Ward watched it all quietly, knowing the storm was only beginning. A week later, a smuggler ship docked at the base, bringing supplies. Its captain, a sly-looking creature with too many eyes, pulled Sarek aside. "You have something dangerous here," he whispered. Sarek stiffened. "What do you mean?" The smuggler smiled, his teeth yellow. "Rumors spread fast, too fast. I've already heard the Empire is searching. Fleets are moving. They say a human walks again." Sarek tried to hide her reaction, but the smuggler leaned closer. "If it's true, then your little base will not survive the month." The Kareth base had grown tense. The air itself felt heavy, as though the walls knew something was coming. Ships patrolled the edges of the hidden asteroid, soldiers sharpened their weapons, and everyone kept glancing toward the stars. The rumors had spread too far, too fast. Ward felt it. Sarek felt it. The entire base seemed to vibrate with expectation, as if the void itself was holding its breath. Ward moved through the corridors with calm steps. He had spoken little since his rescue, but his silence only made him larger in the eyes of those around him. Some aliens avoided him altogether. Others followed him with questions they dared not ask. Sarek confronted him one evening in the command chamber. "The Empire is searching for us," she said sharply. "Every hour their patrols move closer." "You brought this on us." Ward looked at her without fear. No, the Empire was always coming. "Now you will see what they fear most." Sarek's silver eyes narrowed. "And what is that?" Ward's gaze shifted to the star map glowing on the wall. "That we are not alone." 3 nights later it happened. The base's alarms blared suddenly, shrill and urgent. Soldiers rushed to stations, weapons drawn, eyes wide. On the outer monitors a signal appeared, unidentified. Not Kareth, not Empire. Sarek stormed into the control room. "Report!" A technician's voice shook. "Something is coming out of slipspace. Small, 1 ship only." The chamber held its breath. On the screen, the void rippled and tore open. From the wound of light, a vessel slid into real space. Silent, sleek and black as obsidian. Its hull shimmered with strange patterns. Its engines burned with steady blue fire. No one spoke. That is not Empire design," a soldier whispered. Sarek's eyes widened. "Then what?" Before she could finish, Ward entered the chamber. He stopped when he saw the ship on the screen. For the first time since his rescue, something flickered across his face. Recognition. The ship docked with perfect precision, sliding into the asteroid hangar as if it had been here 100 times before. Its landing gear touched down with a hiss. The hangar doors sealed shut. Silence followed. The Kareth soldiers raised their weapons, forming a line. The rescued prisoners clustered together, fear written across their faces. Ward walked forward slowly, his steps steady, his expression unreadable. The ship's hatch hissed open. Mist spilled onto the hangar floor. A figure stepped out. She was tall, dressed in dark armor that gleamed under the lights. Her hair was tied back, her eyes sharp as blades. Every step she took carried authority, power, and something else, something that made the air feel heavier. She was human. The soldiers froze. The prisoners gasped. Even Sarek stood speechless. The woman's gaze swept across the room before locking on Ward. For a long moment, silence hung between them. Then at last her expression softened. "Captain Elias Ward," she said. Her voice was firm but warm. "We never leave our own behind." Ward inclined his head. "Admiral Kalin." The name spread through the hangar like thunder. Admiral, a title of war, of command. Humanity was not only alive, it was organized. Kalin stepped closer, clasping Ward's forearm in greeting. "You've been gone too long, old friend." Ward's eyes burned with quiet fire. "Not by choice." Kalin looked around the hangar, her gaze settling on Sarek and the Kareth soldiers. "You freed him," she said. "For that humanity thanks you." Her words carried weight. "Gratitude, yes, but also a promise." She turned back to Ward. "We heard your signal. We came as fast as we could. And where one of us is taken—" She raised her chin, her voice carrying through the chamber. "All of us return." As if on cue, the asteroid trembled. Technicians scrambled to the monitors. The void outside rippled again. Not one ship this time, but many. Slipspace ruptured across the stars. One by one, vessels emerged, sleek black and burning with blue fire. Dozens, hundreds. The Kareth base shook with awe as the human fleet appeared in orbit. Their ships were silent, disciplined like predators moving in formation. They bore no flags, no symbols. Only the quiet strength of survival made steel. The prisoners fell to their knees. The Kareth soldiers whispered in disbelief. Sarek's voice was hushed. Impossible. Ward's lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile. Inside the hangar, Admiral Kaelin raised her hand. Her small device on her wrist projected a hologram. Maps, battle lines, signals of hidden outposts. She looked at Ward, then at the gathered aliens. "You saved one of ours," she said to them. "Now humanity will not forget." Her gaze hardened. "The Empire thinks us extinct. They think we are broken, but we have hidden, rebuilt, and prepared. The time has come." Her eyes swept the room, locking on every face. "Humanity has returned, and we do not come only for ourselves. We come for all who suffer." Outside, the human fleet spread like wings around the asteroid. Their engines glowed like blue stars, their weapons silent but ready. For the first time in generations, the galaxy would see human warships not as myths, not as ghosts, but as reality. The Kareth rebels trembled between fear and hope. The rescued prisoners whispered prayers, and somewhere in the heart of the Empire, alarms began to sound. The humans were back. Ward stood beside Kaelin, his scars a silent story of survival. Together they looked out at the growing fleet. "This is only the beginning," Kaelin said. Ward nodded. "Then let the galaxy remember us." The hangar lights dimmed as the fleet powered up, engines glowing brighter, casting long shadows across the base. The human return had begun. The Kareth base no longer felt the same. Where once it had been a lonely outpost of rebels and fugitives, now it stood at the heart of something far greater. The stars outside glowed with the engines of the human fleet, their black hulls forming a silent wall of steel. Dozens of ships, scouts, cruisers, carriers, moved with precise formation, every vessel sharp, disciplined, and alive with power. For the first time in generations, the galaxy saw humanity not as a ghost, but as an army. Inside the base, the mood was divided. Some prisoners and rebels wept openly, hope flooding into them like sunlight after years of darkness. Others trembled with fear, whispering that this fleet would bring only fire and war. Ward walked among them in silence, his presence a bridge between past suffering and the storm to come. He spoke little, but his scars told stories no words could. And wherever he walked, the whispers followed. In the command chamber, Admiral Kaelin stood before a holographic map of the sector. Her officers, men and women hardened by exile and survival, stood at her side. Their uniforms were simple, practical, but their eyes carried the fire of purpose. "The Empire will know by now," Kaelin said. Her voice was calm but carried weight. "They will send scouts, then fleets, then their full might. We must be ready." Commander Sarek stood opposite her, arms crossed. The Kareth leader had faced countless battles, but even she seemed unsettled by humanity's sudden return. "You cannot fight the Empire alone," Sarek warned. "Their fleets stretch across half the galaxy. Their armies number in the millions." Kaelin's gaze did not waver. "We do not stand alone." "Not anymore." Ward stepped forward. His voice was steady, sharp as a blade. "The Empire thinks strength is in numbers. They forget what strength truly means." Sarek's silver eyes narrowed. "And what does it mean to humans?" Ward's gaze hardened. "It means you fight even when the odds are impossible. You fight until you win." The chamber fell silent at his words. The Kareth exchanged uneasy glances, but none dared challenge the steel in his voice. Across the base, preparations began. Human engineers worked beside alien rebels, repairing ships, strengthening defenses, and installing weapons the Kareth had never seen before. Small devices that could cloak a vessel in silence, torpedoes that carried enough firepower to shatter a cruiser, drones that swarmed like living storms. The Kareth watched in awe as humans rebuilt their broken machines with speed and precision. The rebels had always fought with scraps. The humans turned those scraps into weapons, a mechanic muttered under his breath as he watched a fighter roar to life. "They take broken things and make them stronger," another answered softly. "That's what makes them dangerous." In the lower hangar, Ward spoke to the freed prisoners. His voice was calm, but every word struck like iron. "You know the chains of the Empire. You know their cruelty. They told you humanity was gone. So you would believe there was no hope. But look outside. Look at the stars. Dozens of eyes turned toward the viewport where the human fleet glowed like fire in the void. They tried to erase us, Ward continued. They failed. And now we return, not just for ourselves but for all of you. Some prisoners wept. Others clenched their fists. For the first time, the idea of freedom did not feel like a dream. But while hope grew, so did fear. In the shadows of the galaxy, alien factions argued. Some wanted to ally with humans, believing they would finally break the Empire's grip. Others whispered that siding with humans would bring ruin, that the Empire's wrath would fall on anyone who stood beside them. And in the Empire's capital, the High Command sat in furious silence. Impossible, one general hissed. We wiped them out. They hid, another growled. They rebuilt. The Supreme Commander's voice was cold as steel. Then we will finish what we began. Gather the fleets. Leave nothing alive. Orders spread across the Empire. Armadas moved. Worlds were armed. The storm was coming. Back on the Kareth base, Admiral Kalin and Commander Serik stood together in the observation deck, watching the human fleet shift and maneuver in orbit. They are ready, Kalin said quietly. The storm broke at last. The Kareth base shuddered with alarms as scouts screamed warnings across the comms. Empire fleets had arrived, dark triangles of steel blotting out the stars. Their engines burned crimson, their hulls bristled with weapons, dozens, then hundreds. The Empire had come to crush the ember before it could burn into fire. In the command chamber, Admiral Kalin stood tall, her gaze locked on the unfolding holomap. Red markers spread across the screen like bloodstains. They've committed half a fleet, Serik whispered. Her voice trembled, though she fought to hide it. We cannot match their numbers. Kalin's reply was cold steel. We don't need numbers. We are human. Ward placed a scarred hand on the table. The Empire came for one prisoner. They will leave fearing us all. The hangars roared with life. Fighters screamed as engines lit. Human crews moved with flawless precision, their every step drilled by years of hidden training. Kareth soldiers scrambled beside them, their eyes wide but determined, guided by the humans' confidence. For the first time, rebels and humans stood shoulder to shoulder. Ward climbed into a black fighter, his movements sure despite the scars of captivity. Around him, squadrons prepared for launch. The hangar shook with the thunder of awakening war. Over the intercom, Kalin's voice rang clear. Humanity was written off as extinct. Today we prove the galaxy wrong. Today we fight not only for ourselves, but for everyone who has ever known the Empire's chains. The hangar doors split open. The void rushed in. Launch. The first clash was fire and fury. Empire cruisers surged forward, weapons spitting lances of red energy. The asteroid shields flared under the assault, glowing hot. Human destroyers slipped between blasts, returning fire with blue torpedoes that struck with terrifying precision. The void became chaos, flashes of light, burning debris, ships twisting in lethal dances. Ward's fighter tore through the melee, weaving between enemy craft. His instincts, sharpened by years of survival, guided his hands like a second soul. He fired once, twice. 2 Empire interceptors vanished in blossoms of fire. Behind him, a Kareth pilot followed close, her voice shaking through the comms. How are you flying like this? Ward's reply was calm, almost cold. I am human, but the Empire pressed hard. Their numbers were overwhelming. For every cruiser destroyed, more pushed through. Their capital ships loomed like mountains of steel, advancing with unstoppable weight. In the command chamber, Serik gripped the table. We cannot hold. They will break us. Kalin's eyes narrowed. She raised her wrist device. Signal the fleet. A silent pulse spread into the stars. Moments later, the void erupted. From hidden slipspace rifts, more human ships appeared. Not dozens this time, hundreds. Carriers, cruisers, frigates. A fleet long hidden, now unleashed. The Kareth base trembled with awe as the sky filled with black hulls and burning blue engines. The humans had not returned with a whisper. They had returned with thunder. The Empire's formation faltered. Their commanders shouted orders, struggling to adapt. But the tide had already turned. Human carriers released waves of drones that swarmed like living storms, overwhelming enemy defenses. Cruisers launched torpedoes that shattered the Empire's heavy ships. Fighters tore through their interceptors with precision strikes. Ward's squadron dove deep into enemy lines, striking at command ships. His voice carried across comms, sharp and steady. Target their flag vessel. Cut off the head. Kareth pilots followed him without hesitation. His calm became their courage. Inside the Empire flagship, panic spread. Officers shouted. Screens flickered with warnings. Fire suppression systems struggled. A blast tore through its hull, rocking the massive vessel. Retreat! A commander roared, but it was too late. Ward's torpedoes struck the flagship's heart. The explosion ripped across its spine, splitting the ship in two. For a moment, silence followed. Then the Empire fleet broke, their discipline shattered. Vessels turned and fled into slipspace, abandoning the battle they thought already won. The void quieted. Wreckage drifted like silent tombstones. Fires burned in the distance, fading into embers. The human fleet held formation, steady, victorious. On the Kareth base, cheers erupted. Prisoners wept openly. Soldiers dropped to their knees. Even Serek stood speechless, silver eyes wide as she watched the Empire retreat. Kaelin lowered her wrist device, her voice calm, but heavy with promise. Today, we showed them humanity still lives. Tomorrow we show them we cannot be broken. Ward landed his fighter in the hangar, the metal still glowing from battle. As he stepped onto the deck, Kareth soldiers and rescued prisoners surrounded him, their faces filled with awe. One whispered the words that spread quickly. Like fire through dry grass, they came back for us. Ward looked at the faces around him, the broken, the scarred, the hopeless, now reborn. He felt the weight of Kaelin's gaze on him. And he knew, this was only the first strike. The Empire was vast. The war ahead would be long. But humanity had returned, and they had not come alone, they had come for everyone. In the Empire's capital, the Supreme Commander sat in silence, his hands gripping the edge of the war table. Reports filled the air, defeats, retreats, losses. He stared into the holographic void, his voice low and venomous. Humans. Ghosts made flesh. Then we will burn the galaxy to destroy them. But in the shadows, whispers spread across worlds. Whispers of ships black as night, of warriors scarred but unbroken, of a fleet that fought for more than survival. The whispers grew into hope. Hope that humanity had returned not as conquerors, but as liberators, and that hope was more dangerous to the Empire than any fleet. The battlefield was quiet now. Debris drifted in the void, broken fragments of Empire warships glowing faintly as fires sputtered in the cold. The stars shone beyond, untouched by the fury that had raged only hours before. Where there had been chaos and death, there was now silence. The human fleet remained in formation, black silhouettes lit by the blue glow of their engines. They did not celebrate, did not scatter. They stood like sentinels, steady and unshaken. Victory was theirs, but the war was far from over. Inside the Kareth base, the mood was different. The prisoners who had once whispered only despair now shouted and sang. Some laughed for the first time in years. Others simply sat in silence, tears streaming down their faces, as if afraid to believe that hope was real. The Kareth soldiers walked among them, no longer carrying themselves as fugitives, but as comrades who had fought beside something far greater than they had ever imagined. Humanity's return had changed everything. Ward stood on the observation deck, staring at the human fleet as it drifted in the void. His reflection shimmered faintly in the glass, scarred, tired, but no longer alone. Serek joined him quietly. For a long time she said nothing. She simply watched the ships with him, the hum of the station filling the silence. At last she spoke. "I saw you fight. You flew like a man who has nothing left to lose." Ward's voice was low, steady. "On that prison ship they tried to break me. They tried to erase who I was. But I remembered what we are. That's why I survived." Serek studied him, her silver eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "You are not just a survivor, Elias Ward. You are a reminder." Ward's gaze stayed on the fleet. "No, humanity itself is the reminder. To the Empire, to the galaxy, that no matter what chains they forge, someone will always break them." In the command chamber, Admiral Kaelin stood before a table of maps and reports. Her officers spoke in hushed tones, reviewing losses, counting ships. She raised her hand and silence fell. "This was only one battle," she said. "The Empire has countless fleets still. They will come harder, faster, more ruthless than before. But today we showed them that humanity is not a memory. We are a storm they cannot silence." She looked at the Kareth leaders who now stood among her officers. "You stood with us. You fought beside us. That makes you part of this storm. And we do not forget those who fight at our side. Serek bowed her head slightly. The pride of her people flickered in her eyes. Then let us make the Empire fear every world they have enslaved. Kaelin's lips curved into a faint, sharp smile. They already do. In the hangar, Ward walked among the repaired fighters. Kerrith mechanics worked beside human engineers, trading words in broken accents but shared purpose. The sharp scent of fuel filled the air, mixed with the faint heat of cooling engines. A small alien prisoner approached him, a child, thin and trembling, eyes wide with awe. "Is it true?" the child asked softly. "That your people came back for us?" Ward knelt, his scarred face level with the child's. For a moment he said nothing. Then gently he nodded. "We came back for everyone." The child's eyes shone. He whispered the words to himself, as if afraid they might vanish. They came back across the galaxy. Word spread faster than any Empire ship could silence. On mining colonies, slaves whispered the news in the dark tunnels. On frontier worlds, rebels raised their heads for the first time in years. Even in the Empire's own cities, citizens traded rumors in hushed voices. The humans live. They fought the Empire and won. They fight not only for themselves but for us. The whispers grew louder, stronger. Hope, once buried, began to spark across 1,000 worlds. The Empire struck hard at these rumors, declaring them lies, punishing those who spoke too boldly. But punishment only made the whispers spread faster, because the galaxy had seen it with their own eyes. Ships black as the void, engines burning blue,